Your hosts are The Great Order and No White Guilt. And this is the After Party. The crown winner of last week is Quebec, who financially gifted $50 US. God bless you. Thank you, dear sir, and congratulations. In second place, we had a tie between I Love Jesus Christ and Brad C., both financially gifting $20 US. Thank you so much, and congratulations to the both of you coming in at second place. Financially gift on Entropy at 15%. In just a few moments, once I have that link up and rolling, you will find the URL in the description below. You can watch the stream there. You can ask and vote on questions there. Or you can decide to hop on over to Cash App. You will also find the URL for Cash App in the description below, where you can financially gift at no cost to you. Jared and I evenly share those financial gifts with our guests on the after party. Now, today we have our dear sister and just winning champion of White Wellbeing, Yizz, on tap. Yizz, please introduce yourself to the community for those who don't know you, and we have many new people. Tell them where they can find you, especially since you're dealing with some censorship. And then Mr. George will take us into this conversation.
Hello, and thank you for having me back again. I consider myself a speaker and a proponent of white well-being. I don't really identify as much else anymore these days. I started a channel a long time ago in pursuit of truth and sorting things out, finding out where my place was, what I should do with my life and my words. And that sort of led me to where I am now. You can find me on Odysee. BitChute stopped working for me. I used to update it all the time, but it hasn't worked. For my uploads get stuck in processing about 3 months ago. Haven't had any progress with that. Odysee is now my primary platform since I got censored from YouTube. You can follow me at Not Yizz on Twitter, which is not me. It's someone completely different, of course, because my primary Twitter account got yeeted. You can also follow me on DLive and Trovo, all by the same name, Yizz the Eunuch, except at Twitter, which is at Not Yizz. And mostly what I do is I like to engage with other content creators who like to talk about what we can do, whether it be activism or building parallel economy trade stuff, working on local grow farms, local manufacturing, how to build stronger I guess you could say interconnected communities in rural areas to do community schooling, homeschooling, that kind of thing. That's what interests me, especially in the last year or so. And I like to engage with people who like to talk about that, because living in the middle of nowhere with a good family and a good setup, there's really not much else for me to do with my free time to feel like I actually matter, other than talking to people, giving them wisdom, hearing other ideas, and trying to encourage people to make a difference where they live. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell, especially me of the last 6 to 8 months.
Well, welcome back, Yizz. For anyone who's keeping tabs, this is Yizz's second time here with us on the after party. And the first time, as we do, it was a getting to know you kind of session. And we heard a lot about Yizz's background and what led her to the position that she's in now and the activism that she does, using her voice, as she was saying. And that was a few months ago. So now we're just having a fun, freewheeling Saturday evening here in the Eastern US, at least, conversation. And feel free to get any questions in. But we're going to just talk about some things that have been going on. I know you have been censored several times since the last time we spoke, since the last time that you were on this show. So that might be something to enter into, an entry point into other topics, of the conversation. So why don't you tell us what happened with that?
Well, I've been censored from Twitter, lost several Facebook accounts long before you guys knew me. I've been on a road of censorship with trying to get the truth out there and talk about what's going on. But in the last 6 months, I've had a lot more noticeable censorship as I've gained in popularity. It seems to be how it goes for some reason. But in the last month, my YouTube channel's gotten 2 strikes. One for spreading misinformation about the COOF, even though the video that they took down and gave me a channel strike for spreading misinformation, medical misinformation about the COOF, was I interviewed the people that study corpses and study what a pathogen does It's like forensic pathology doctor or something like that. I found a guy who had worked on, I think, 9 or 10 early cadavers that were killed. Not just, oh, hey, they died of something, so we're going to call it the coof. But people that actually died from the weird tumors and stuff that riddled the lungs and other things that make this disease unique. And I had a long 1.5 hour talk with him specifically about what was myth and what was true about the coof, about what could a vaccine possibly do? What could it not do? What do masks do and not do, specifically about this new virus, and what does this new virus do? And it was nothing but that for like 90 minutes. And they said that was medical misinformation and gave my channel a strike. And I just think that is completely ridiculous, because anybody that listens to that 90 minutes, which is on Odysee, by the way, if you want to look it up. But it was from, I think, last October, last September, or something like that. And it's just called Q&A about the coof, I think is what it's called. And it's got a picture of a virus. You can know it by the thumbnail. But that was my first strike about 3 weeks ago. And then just a few days ago, I got a second channel strike. And one of my episodes of Dragons of Discord was taken down for promoting hatred and violence towards protected communities and minorities, which is ridiculous, because not only is that show tongue-in-cheek make-believe to poke fun at the news, but we don't really use hateful language or talk about minorities or any group with disparaging terms. It's all just yuck yuck and laughing at how ridiculous clown world stuff is. It's a very lighthearted, jokey stream where people can express their serious views, but do so through a comedic, lighthearted lens. And
do you have any idea of what was said in that show that could have triggered
No,
that?
they never tell you when you get a strike. They just say, you got a strike for this. And even if it's a 10-hour stream, you have no idea where in that stream it is. Even if it's a 30-minute video, they'll never tell you specifically what it is. They never do that. And I have a feeling that that is by design. So they never actually have to say specifically what it is and isn't allowed.
Of course.
Because that gives them all the power for censorship. But I don't want to get too far off on that. Also, I have lost about 6 Discord accounts in total. And the same day that I got my second strike, I got my primary Discord, my backup Discord, and my Discord server shut down. And always for the same thing, promoting, what was it? I think Discord says promoting hostile ideas or criminal something or another. The way that they phrase it, it's like, you're guilty of criminal hate speech and criminal fake news, you naughty, naughty person who thinks for yourself.
A lot of what I saw about Discord when it first came out, a lot of people were hopeful for it, and they thought it was the Wild West, the free thing. And we seem to see, I see Jason nodding, we seem to see this pattern over and over again, where people get excited because there's a new platform and we're going to be free on it. And somehow, magically, they fall in line. Now, I never really got into Discord. It's I guess it's just not my thing.
Unfortunately, it's one of the best services for communication that there is. The way that you can organize chat channels, you can build communities there. And I might still go back, because it's easy to just get it all started back up again. So it's not like with YouTube where you build, where you have to work really hard to build something. You can just make a new one, like making a new email account. So I might just go straight back to using Discord and not care, but I haven't made a new one yet, because I've just taken a few days off to just say, you know what, I'm just going to unplug and think about things before I dive right back into it again.
Well, Yizz, when it first came out, though, was there a period when it wasn't like that and they're ramping up now? I have heard a few things about Discord recently.
Well, yes and no. To my knowledge, every connective platform starts off small and can't be censorious and choosy because it needs to grow.
Right.
It seems like the anti-whites who call themselves Marxists and communists and intersectionalists, the ones that really like to be the nitpicky morality police, you know, the kind I'm talking about, they are really good at weaseling their way into middle management and higher management positions within bigger corporations, especially ones out of Silicon Valley and California and New York, all of these big cities. And they are almost always the type of person that ends up policing and controlling all this communication software. And so you've got that type, once it starts getting big, deciding who goes and who to censor and why to censor and that kind of thing. So I think we are pretty much going to see that across the board, unless there are people at the top that ensure to keep that element out as much as they can. Like the Christian white positive guy, Andrew Torba, who runs Gab. He does a pretty good job of making sure his platform runs pretty smooth and supports, equal opportunity to speak and all that stuff. I think that the libertarian right Mises camp people are the ones that run Library and Odyssey, so they're pretty good so far about free speech and making sure that people aren't unfairly censored, that kind of thing. Now, there are a lot of options out there right now, dozens of them. So many I can't even name them. Who knows? I don't know if I'm going to try to fire up something new that's a brand new kind of Discord or a new kind of communication software I haven't used. But right now, I still have plenty of things to keep me going, and I might even fire up another Discord. I don't know. But to answer your question, I think that it wasn't like that when it started, even if it was ran by the same kind of people. I just think that once they get so large, they have the ability to censor, and so they do it. That's I think that when they have the power and the numbers behind them, numerical courage, you might say.
Well said. Yeah, and these obviously the rules. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. Is that they don't want to tell you exactly what rule you broke, or they keep it intentionally vague. It's entirely subjective, and of course that is intentional, so that they can selectively apply. And I was just having this discussion last night about different individuals who are able to say things on YouTube that even vaguely mentioned here in this channel would be gone. So that is just how the anti-whites operate. It's the reality. The other reality is something that I think is you kind of maybe hinting at or working around, is that it just shocks me to no end that there are so many people in the white sympathetic sphere who engage in and will watch and read endless hours of doom dissecting. And they find out about a lot of different things in these research about doom dissecting. One of the things they find out is how those who victimize us, the anti-whites, set up these faux fronts of opposition to themselves. And they also co-opt opposition to themselves. And yet, and this is a perfect example of how going into this environment, this doom dissecting, is just a dead end, because these same people come away from all of this doom dissecting, and then they have the opinion that, well, we'll just go from platform to platform to platform as they kick us off, not realizing that they are shunting you down to these platforms that they either control already or they will then co-opt. And the idea has to be instead that we need to be everywhere and nowhere, rather than we'll just go find a new home every time. We'll just go find a new home, when really that new home is just another pen for you to sit in. Everybody gets over there and talk about the demoralization. There's a psychological warfare element to this. How many times is a person going to be able to jump from platform to platform to platform, building a new account, growing that account's numbers, and then to be censored off of that platform, or to become afraid of being censored off because others are, and then having to go to another platform? Well, eventually they're going to give up, and it's going to become the norm that unless you behave the way that the anti-whites want you to behave, well, you're just going to get censored from everything. So we need to be cognizant of the way the anti-whites operate, and be of the mindset that we are going to be everywhere and we're going to be nowhere. Let them strike at smoke, and then we will form elsewhere again and spread white well-being, the curative contagion, which is catching on wildly. But I don't want to segue to that just yet. I mean, I want to continue with whatever your thoughts you might have on the censorship and the escalating censorship, especially since I'd like to hear, Yizz, your thoughts. We had so many people, even people who were for, I guess I won't name anybody, but even people who were for, who wanted Donald Trump to win, they yet had the opinion that if Biden won, which of course is exactly what happened, totally legitimately and fairly, Biden won the election.
Of course, just ask CNN.
Precisely. They will tell you very clearly. So even though they wanted that, they still said, well, if Biden wins, or if the Democrats win, well, then there'll be this loosening of these restrictions. They'll let up, they'll take their foot off of us, and they will allow us to speak again. And the reason why they were so ignorant and wrong there, and we, in Going Free, were so right, was because we talked about how over the last year, we observed that the anti-whites hold far more nodes of power throughout governance in states and at the federal level than could have even been guessed at. And so there wasn't going to be this boomerang effect that we had seen for administration after administration after administration. And in fact, what we would see was a picking up, the exact opposite of what all of these people were predicting, what they had become accustomed to for so many years. We said it was an era had ended in politics in the United States, and we are proven right by the facts on the ground. So instead, we see Biden come into office, the Democrats come into office, and the censorship goes up. It goes through the roof. The new laws and et cetera going up. So I'd like to get your thoughts on some of that reality, that now with this, instead of there being what was always the case before, this loosening up of restrictions, because now the Democrats run everything, we're seeing the clamp down getting severer by the month.
Well, one thing I will say is anyone, regardless of how popular they are or how much bigger of a speaker or content creator they are than me, if they claimed that once the quote unquote nationalist uprising was dealt with, or the Trumpites or whatever were dealt with, that the censorship would lessen, then I think those people are either disingenuous liars or stupid, because everyone in power that has power, from the Biden administration to Silicon Valley to the high end up at Alphabet Google over in Ireland, they have all been saying they want more censorship and more control over speech and more shaping of thought of youngsters and more meddling with your rights and your children's education. They've been saying that they are going to use their power to take more of that, to take more, what's the right word? Take a more, let me think of the right word here. Take a more active role in the information we all hear, to cultivate and curate every narrative, not just the ones that they used to control. They have been openly saying they want to do this for years. So I think anyone who says, who made the claim that you brought up, is either lying or just dumb, because they clearly didn't listen to any of the people that were going to have power and get more power, because of course they were going to do all of this. I even made videos last year warning that that exactly what's happening would happen. You might have even seen a couple of them. So that's my take on that. Is I think that the censorious nature of the power structure that we see, call it whatever you want. The anti-white narrative controls all. You might want to call it the cathedral. Some people call it the New World Order. I like to call it the Leviathan. Whatever you call this large power structure that wants to use different avenues of control to shape thought, to control narrative of news, it all wants total control. And they've been saying they want more control, so why wouldn't you believe them? I just think it's ridiculous to think otherwise. Why would they be lying all this time about their plans?
Well, you don't look at what they say, you look at what they do. I mean, what kind of structure like this is ever going to say, oh, okay, we have enough power? Is that how life works? If anyone under 5 years old that's gone outside the house, do you understand that that's not how life works?
I think that, I don't know. Again, I do my best to attribute to ignorance instead of malice where I can. But certain pundits, whom I won't name, who have a lot of sway in white sympathetic sphere, I often feel like they're disingenuous, because I think to myself, how can't they know what I know? How can't they know? And yet they say things that are completely false, or only a moron would believe if they know what I know. And that's why I don't really follow or care about the opinion of a lot of larger names in our related spheres. I feel like that they are either purposefully disingenuous or dumb, so why should I care what they have to say?
What about that term that you just referred to for a second, the cathedral, Leviathan? Those always struck me as a bit too much of an abstraction. And it's just easier to say these are oligarchs who are in power, and
sure, yeah, that's
centers of influence, but they all based in their own ways for their own reasons. Maybe there's a few general themes, but they're all
the way that I view the agenda, the anti-white agenda, is sort of a standalone complex. It doesn't. What that means is a bunch of things that have sort of come together because of different factors. It's not one table full of Bond villains that control the world going, yes, we're going to do this now. It's not like that. Standalone complex is sort of a complicated term that most people don't really understand. So whenever I talk to a community, some people call it the NWO. Some people call it what's another good one? The globalists. Some people call it whatever. In this community, we call it the anti-white narrative or the anti-white agenda, because that's an excellent word of our choosing to put on what that standalone complex of different actors and agencies and groups do. So calling things by what they do works. But the reason that I use those terms is Mises Moldbug came up with the cathedral, I think, and that's really popular in dissenter and NRX communities. And that's a pretty common term, cathedral, to use, which just means all of this stuff that's working at odds with Western civilization and Western people, and whatever facet that takes, they just call it the cathedral. So that's where that term comes from.
Yeah, I know. It's just, it's never sat exactly right with me. Even it's too abstract, and even the choice of the word, if you're protecting Western civilization, why would you use a term that cathedral is a beautiful, regardless of your religious beliefs, it's kind of beautiful structures that Western people create.
It's more like a surly gang of anti-white oligarchs.
Did you have any more about censorship or your thoughts on what Jason was saying earlier? I mean, that's something people need to understand, that the platforms are secondary. The connections and relationships in the network we have, decentralized network, of course, but that is the lifeblood. That's really what your focus is. And then we plug in and plug off of all of these different platforms and tools and technologies as we need them, and we use them the best way we can while we're able to be on there.
I think.
What is your experience?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And take of that? No, what is your experience and take of that, and how has that developed in the time that you've been online? Were you kind of more hopeful and naive when you began? Like,
no, I've been about the same since I began, because I knew that there would be a lot of censorship in my future if I got larger and kept speaking the truth. So, and I agree with the sentiment you just shared about the connectivity is what matters, the message is what matters, the doing is what matters. It's not just building up one platform or having a loud voice in one place. I always knew that I needed to grow and branch out and make friends and follow websites and follow chat rooms and that kind of thing. Because if I put all my eggs in one basket, well, when the anti-whites take that basket, then you don't have any eggs. So I knew that it was wise to make friends with all the other egg farmers, so to speak. Big shout out to Sarah Dye, since we're talking about farming. But I think that the thing to take away from my recent censorship experience is building connections with people, especially like you guys in the white well-being community, other truth warriors in America that want just what is, not even a slant on it, but just the facts of the matter to be talked about. These people have to be connected now across myriad platforms and different services. And if anything, it has taught me that the tactics that I started doing when I decided to be a public voice were the right ones. They were the smart ones, and they very much line up with what you just talked about.
Good to hear. Well, you had a lot of foresight there, and I commend you there. Of course, we understand people learn as they go along as well, but kudos to you for having that foresight. I'm not surprised. You mentioned that you network and you talk to different types of people and different little communities. And I know we talked about that when you were on a couple months ago. As I said, if you're interested to hear more about that, it is here on YouTube, but it's also on the afterparty.tv. We catalog all of these there. But you continue to be very active. You know, that's why we love you. And that's why
I definitely feel loved here. I love all of you too.
Well, yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. But we see there are so many people, and you're a great example, who are really just taking this into all kinds of avenues and doing things both online and in person. You were saying to us that you wanted to talk a little bit about your activism and how that's changed you. So I was asking you a moment ago if you kind of had any battle scars from being knocked around on the internet, and you said no. Didn't sound like it. You were kind of prepared for that. But you did say you wanted to talk about, there's been kind of a trajectory to your activism, what you've learned along the way and how you've kind of changed and grown. And of course, for anyone who might be new or they might not remember every last detail from when you were on the last time.
Sure.
Of course, feel free to tell us the kinds of things you do.
Sure. I'll start with some celebration with you guys, a bit of a testimonial, so to speak. Like I talked about last time, and I talked to you guys about a lot, especially when I call in sometimes on the Sunday streams. I am active with American Patriot MAGA types, NRX dissenter types, and I have engaged with them so often and used the words anti-white, anti-white narrative, anti-whiteism so often that it has actually spread to where they use it even when I'm not there. Just 2 Fridays ago, one of the biggest NRX big brain guys, the guys who, they want to ride the tiger and look at all the economics and all the big brain stuff. He was having on Friday nights, he has the cigar stream. And they like to talk about, academic big boy stuff. And one of the other pundits who has about 20,000 followers and the host who has around 50,000 followers, the problems of race and anti-whiteism came up. Now, none of them used the word anti-whiteism, but for 10 or 15 minutes, they harped on this subject, and they only used the word anti-white, not anti-white racism. I wasn't even there. I wasn't even telling them to do it in the chat. But for like 10 or 15 minutes, they just, it was the anti-white this anti-white that. And of course they're acting anti-white. It's against white people. And they only used the term correctly the way we would use it. And I wasn't even there. And I would like to think that because of me and the other white well-being folks and people that aren't maybe in our community that have just learned to use the lexicon correctly, I think that that's a very important victory to notice is those words linger and are interchanged between people who talk and think about this stuff, even when I'm not around. And I think that's a really good sign. And another larger creator that has about 27,000 followers, he now regularly, when the terms racist and racism comes up, he very often reminds his followers that those are anti-white slurs. And I'm not even around when he does that. And sometimes I'm not even in the chat when he does it. So I know he's not doing it just to appease me or whatever. It's just, I think that when we take this lexicon to people, it will just click with a lot of folks who are jacked in and care about cultural things. And those are just, 2 examples of why I think what I do matters, is because I get the right words and the right ideas going sort of in the mix. And then people use them because I'd like to think because I helped. And of course, those of you who, especially the White Wellbeing outreach team, I know you guys help a lot too, putting it in the comments and talking to people. And it's definitely a group effort, but that's some good testimonial of what
That's great. I would like to just add one thing quickly, especially if anyone's new here. This is not the word. When Yizz says that she's getting words out there that have been tested and developed, a good number of them, of course, have come from Jason here, because this is a specialty of his, something he's worked on and tested for a couple of decades now. It's not just because, TM, these are words that came from us, so there's some kind of ego thing going on. The reason we want to get these words out there, these terms out there, is because we know there is a chain, a thought chain, a cause and effect chain of, if you use, even change your phrase by one word, add a word or delete a word, depending on what the case may be, you could leave yourself open when people are arguing with you, and you have other people listening to that argument and trying to take in both sides, and you have some potential people who could come over to your way of thinking. We know that there are chains of, if you say A, then B and C happens, but if you say X, then Y and Z will happen. They're chains of thought. There's a logic to them. There's a reason why it's not anti-white racism and it's just anti-white.
Right. And instead of saying critical race theory or any of those things, we should just stick to the lexicon and call it anti-whiteism.
Maybe someone new in the chat, could you guess why saying anti-white is much more effective than saying anti-white racism? And anti-white racism leaves you open to getting right back into the matrix.
Let's see if we have some advanced. Let's see if we have some advanced students in the class today.
Maybe we'll have a prize, Jason. We'll have to see. But that was, yes, absolutely what you're saying. Any kind of node of influence, the more that this spreads and spreads and spreads, it's going to just, like this, it's going to slow growth and then explode, like you see on those charts. So
one of the other victories I'd like to share real quick is in the circles that I chat, well, I don't chat right now because my Discords are gone, but in those chat communities, I even introduced the concept of weaponized white guilt that many people didn't even think to talk about. And I still hear that brought up sometimes. People talk about weaponized white guilt, or white guilt is behind this, or white people being guilted or intimidated because of the innate values that we have in Western civilization, that kind of thing. And that's nice to see. I know that many people will get to that on their own anyway, but I still think the more of us that talk about it, that have a loud voice, making sure that you tie this to the source of weaponized white guilt, because it's the white guilt at the core of this, which is probably why Jason chose the screen name he did.
And yeah, let us know more celebrations. As I said, it's a freewheeling Saturday night chat, so tell us more if you have more celebrations before we go on. Celebrate.
Well, I don't have any direct testimonials or celebrations. It would just be rehashing the things that I've already said. But this was an introduction to cover what you were talking about with what activism has taught me and what I've gained from it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is activism taught me a sort of an age-old adage of act your age. And they often say activism is a young person's game. And one of the things that had caused my marriage a lot of stress in the last year was how active I've been. Driving around, talking to people my husband didn't know, going to meet people, sometimes 10 and 15 people at a time, having to sleep in a house with a bunch of people that he doesn't know and he's never met. And that worries him a lot. And not just for my safety, but because, he doesn't want me to be manipulated or used by people that might be lying to me or whatever. And also, it does take its toll on me physically. Physically, I was gaining weight. I was under a lot of stress. But when I stay so active, of course, you can't control your diet as well when you're, sleeping all hours of the day and not knowing where you're going to be or eat 12 hours from now. You end up eating bad food and stuff too. So one of the things that I learned is, I think, especially with how things shook out with the most secure and honest election in history last year, I think that it taught me I need to focus only on local activism. So about 6 months ago, I really started pushing localism as the only thing that I really advocate for when it comes to political activism, local awareness, that kind of thing. So I promised myself and my husband that going forward, I'm not going to play the young person's game of getting in a car and driving around and doing lots of marches and protests and stuff, only if it's necessary in our local area with people that we know. So that has been something I've learned. And again, I'm not saying that you guys shouldn't do that. If you're led to do those things, do things safely and in accordance with the law by all means. But one of the things that I learned was that act your age, and I need to start acting like the responsible 40-plus-year-old that I am, and investing more in my family, my local community, and the people here, and being more active in church, being more active in local PTA, trying to get something like a farming co-op going here in my mountain holler. I would really like to accomplish those things. So I think not only will that be healthier for me personally, it's still doing some good, because in making those local connections, I still get to talk about white guilt. I still get to talk about the words anti-white and anti-whiteism. I still get to correct people when they've heard lies on the news. And if anything, it might even make my life and my activism stronger when I build longer term relationships with people instead of traveling around a lot. So
yeah, that's right.
At least for the rest of this year, I'm not going to be doing any larger activism or going to marches or going to different cities and stuff. I'm just going to focus on what's around here.
Well, yeah, anyone has to assess what the balance is in their life, but we were starting to go somewhere that I naturally was going to ask you, which is how the two play off of each other, off of one another. So you have something really local, the people you know right in your own backyard, you work with them. You told us how you did something at the local community college by you when you were on last time, and stop this kind of anti-white art display that was going on. Mm-hmm. So you have something very local, you have face-to-face interactions, activism, mm-hmm. and then you have the internet where you talk.
And I'm still in communication with one of the young men that runs the Republican Students Union up at the university. He still PMs me about once a month just to give me a heads up on what's going on. So when you make local connections like that, sometimes they last and things can grow from it.
Yeah. So how do the two help sharpen each other, the online and the in-person?
Well, online primarily helped me with speech patterns, language, knowing how to approach topics and how to dodge topics, and always be pithy with what I have to say when the time comes. So basically, online chat rooms, doing streams, you have a narrow window and a small audience that really needs to either be entertained or engaged, or you're going to lose them. And so it's sort of like excellent exercise for the wits of your mind and the impromptu construction of impactful words. And so that's the online stuff has really helped me hone that and practice my speaking and engaging. And that, of course, helps me in any type of activism I do, whether local or abroad, or doing local activism with someone else in a different state. That always helps. How the in-person stuff helps the online stuff, to talk about how it helps back the other way. When you meet people from different walks of life, even in America where we share the same language and a lot of the same traditions, it has taught me how to quickly sort of gauge where a person's from socioeconomically and where they are along the path towards white positivity. So I sort of know where to throw the bobber if I'm fishing. I know where in the current or where in the pond to throw it. And that talking to a lot of different people in person has really helped me know the right starting point and the right bait to put on the hook, so to speak.
Right. Do you think that some online, when it's exclusively online activity, is kind of hurting people's social intelligence? And it's kind of a leading question, but we see people talk to each other online. We were talking about Twitter before in the chat, where it's ridiculous. You would never walk up to someone at a social gathering, and even if you wanted to get them engaged with you, let's say it's not just a troll fest, and maybe come over to your way of thinking, or at least understand you better. The tactics that people use online, I know it's not a one-to-one thing. It is a different dynamic online versus in person, but the things people say are it's so wildly incongruent, like things people would not dare say, and just the rudeness and this and that. I'm concerned about that people are losing social intelligence. And part of the reason why I like what we do and why I'm friends with Jason here is because I see that kind of social intelligence and that kind of balance.
Well, I only really heard one question there, and I do agree that when most of someone's communication, and especially during their developmental years, is in largely anonymous, short form burst communication back and forth, there is a lot lost about the nuance and the personality involved in true communication. So I do agree with you on that.
Yeah. For a takeaway, I know this is kind of an on-the-spot question, so if nothing comes to your mind, totally fine. I think Jason,
I'm not bashful, Jared. Let's dance.
Well, no, just you might draw a blank, but maybe you'll come up back in 5 minutes and say, "Oh yeah, now I do remember a story." But do you have any takeaways for people listening of the kind of thing you're talking about, where you were able to quickly assess where someone was coming from standing in front of you and adjust your approach accordingly?
Just like I did with the Canadian guy, Short Fat Otaku, earlier last year. Many times when I'm in front of people, especially MAGA top voters, when I was doing, because pretty much half the people I talked to were very heavily engaged in the whole MAGA stuff last year. And race is still sort of an uncomfortable thing for them to bring up. It sort of pushes those mean pathogens and makes them sort of go, So instead of saying anti-white, to wet the whistle, I say anti-Western. And this is not a particular demographic, so to speak. It's sort of where along the line someone is with their comfort of speaking about race. And most folks, once I get to talking to them, they realize that I'm not being untoward and I don't have a hidden agenda. I just genuinely want people to realize that race matters too. And it's something that we can freely talk about and we should talk about. And getting them there with saying the words Western civilization, and Western kind is a very good series of stepping stones to then say, and because Western civilization is for white people, that's why those two things are the same. And you hear me say anti-white a lot. And every single time you're like, oh, okay. Or, oh, yeah, I understand. It's never like, oh, no, you're the boogeyman. You're what CNN told me to fear. Like, that doesn't happen. And so that's one of the great strengths of this lexicon, in my opinion.
So you haven't encountered a situation where they thought Western civilization was an abstraction, where it's just anywhere that's modern is Western civilization. Like, if there's skyscrapers in Singapore, then that's Western civilization because they have skyscrapers. It's just a thing that can happen somewhere. It's like an ideology that can just take hold somewhere. They do.
Well, most of the folks I talk to are already pretty aligned with a lot of the things I believe in. It's not like I talk to people that are wildly deeply into liberal spheres or anti-white spheres. I generally don't engage with people like that because I feel like it's a waste of my time.
Well, thank you for that.
Sure. I'm sorry if that wasn't a great answer to what you wanted.
No, it was a great. You're always great, and as I said, it's an on-the-spot question. If you think of more examples that people listening might be able to benefit from, then please pepper them in as they come to you later in the conversation. But Jason,
if you'll give me one moment, I'll think of one from my mother's church.
Yeah.
Well, while you think about that, I just want to say that everything we're talking about here, folks, whether you're watching live or in replay, is of epic, world-shaking, world-changing proportions. We have been and are changing the world. So you go to other channels and you discuss ideologies, political, economic ideologies. You listen to the doom documenting elsewhere, the doom dissecting, like we were talking about. There was a guy, Paul English, was on PWR, and he's a great, we would categorize him as a doom dissector. And people were doing backflips. They were so elated for Paul, who was a raconteur, a wonderful, friendly guy. But he was sharing things from history and talking about how this point or this incident or that incident has gotten us to where we are today. And while that can be entertaining, you only need to hear it once. Once you hear it, you've got to get active at reclaiming our destiny. This squatting down is not Western. The squatting down is something that is for another people, maybe not, on planet Earth.
Are you talking about Slavs?
No, not Slavs. not our squatting Slav. Absolutely not.
I'm just making a joke. Go ahead. Sorry.
I know. Definitely not our squatting Slav. He's a great guy. But no, this sitting, the squatting in information and doing nothing with it other than just imbibing more and more of it does nothing. I know there's this, particularly when it comes to doom dissecting, there's this allure to hear somebody give a new narrative on history, and then to think that you've been vindicated. And you're going to be able to go out into the world now, and you're going to be able to say, well, don't you know, I was right when I held this opinion because X actually happened, Y didn't happen. And what ends up happening, regrettably, for all of you, and the reason why that doom dissecting does nothing for us, is that aside from entertain and aside from that original kernel of information and then you move on, is because you say this to your audience and then they say, you're a liar. The person you were listening to is a liar. You've got it wrong. That's not what happened. And not only that, but they're going to then make the appeal to social proof that everybody in their world and everybody in your world believes the opposite of what you are now sharing, that you have learned studiously while imbibing all of that doom dissection. Once you have been exposed to the information, you need not ever hear it again. And I implored people after the show, I played a little bit of rock after the show, and I interrupted the rock to implore the rock and roll music to implore people to not go out and share the conspiracy theory that Paul shared about the Titanic, because you will burn your reputation. It will do nothing for the recapture of our destiny. So, why am I saying that? Well, because we are talking about things that seem very prosaic right now. Getting into that is the weeds, the work of it. We're getting into the granular level. How do you learn how to do this? How do you deliver this material in this chat group, in this conversation with a single person? It may seem like it couldn't possibly change the world, but indeed it is changing the world. You have not experienced, none of you, no matter how old you are hearing my voice, have experienced a time when so many entities have had their heads forced to say anti-white and anti-whiteism. The reason why this lexicon is being used by people like Forbes, people at the magazine Forbes, Representative Gosar using anti-white, and they all will be using anti-whiteism. Nick, who never used anti-white, and who now HB made a clip where he says it like 8 or 11 times, and he came this close to saying white well-being. The reason why we do this is because when you change the language, which we are doing on a global scale, and Yizz, I want Yizz, and I want Jared, and I want every single one of you who has participated in forcing this into the national conversations of our countries around the world, to focus on that your life, that no matter how little you think you're worth or how much little net value or worth you actually have in possessions or whatever it might be, you have already changed the world by your efforts. All of this other stuff, it can be entertaining, it can have its place, and it does. All of that other stuff is not changing the world and never has. This, what we're talking about here, and if you were to break it down to arranging flowers, or if you were to break it down to a combat sport, or if you were to break it down to putting together the engine for the Formula One race car, it gets prosaic at the nuts and bolts level to keep the metaphor rolling forward. But at some point, you have a machine that runs along the asphalt at 200 miles an hour. It's not enough to sit on the stool and talk about, wouldn't it be nice to have a Formula One that would go 200 miles an hour? It's not enough to say, well, this is where cars came from in the past, and this is how the first ideas came. If you go back far enough, even this great thinker had the idea of automobile. It's not enough to do all that stuff. You have to actually dig in, and when you dig in and you add your efforts to ours, then you can be one of the people who can take credit for the national conversations of our country being changed. Think about all of these people who have gone before you, so smart, so erudite, so sophisticated, and they've been at whatever they've been doing, God bless them, for so long, and have accomplished so little. Since we've been able to broaden our reach by getting out onto these different social media platforms and reaching true champions like Yizz, who then takes the information, she's going free, takes the information of going free, goes into another community, and then is bright enough. What you saw her just touching upon was that she knew she was in a place where anti-white was going to land too heavy on those people. So she started them off with anti-Western, with the objective of getting them to the lexicon and dialectics of going free, to continually empowering them with that. You get to,
and it does work, by the way. It works every time. It
works every time. So we all need to take credit for this. Now, Yizz writes me regularly, and then I'm going to pass it back. But I'm just going to say, and so many of you do the same thing. We have endless testimonials after endless testimonials. Yizz writes me regularly, and she's like, this solitary communication I had with this person and they're flipping over. They were anti-white, now they're flipping over. They were somewhere in the middle, now they're flipping over. And she gets to me with communications of this content producer who has 50,000, 400,000, whatever, these different content producers she's reached out to, got them to say, yeah, I'm interested in that. Yeah, I'll get that going free book. That changes the conversation. These people don't need to know that we're recapturing our destiny by way of this process. They just become a piece of machinery of that recapture. So you can either do something intelligent and get busy and get active at something that, yes, when we dig in like this and we get into the granular level of how to make it work, and how do you know when you're talking with somebody what to say next and that sort of thing, because you have to get there to be trained to learn how to do these things. You don't build a Formula One engine in a Formula One car without any training, without any knowledge. You get the training, and then you go out into the world and you make the difference that then changes the world, so that these politicians Like Gosar, let me just guarantee you all, Gosar and all of the rest of these people are either directly watching or they're being indirectly influenced by people who are either directly watching or themselves indirectly influenced by the lexicon and dialectic bubbling up in their world. Since it works, it's going to keep being used. We are now beyond the tipping point. You don't need more evidence that this works, and you don't need, it's already hitting mainstream everywhere. Now is the time to put your shoulder into it. Every single person you bring over to the dialectic and lexicon is a massive victory that helps to continue to push what we're pushing, and which is already headed downhill. This is Sisyphus. We have reached the other side, and the boulder gravity is helping us. So get busy, and a big salute to Yizz and Jared and everybody else who is. I get passionate about this, as you know. It's been decades of fighting the uphill struggle, and seeing it materialize, and seeing you wonderful people who are making it happen. It could not make my heart swell with more love. So I pass it back. Thank you so much.
I'd like to address, now that I've had time to think about it, something about church. It's very easy at church, especially here in the South, where we do have Black and Mexican people that are part of the congregation occasionally, very rarely, but there are a couple of African-American ladies who do go to my mother's church. But whenever talk of race, or some of them there, they are still married to the word racism because they're very old. But they will often say anti-white racism or racist hatred against white people, that kind of thing. Whenever I start saying things like, well, that's because of the anti-Western or the anti-white narrative, and it's important for us to stop using that word and step out of it. Oftentimes that will lead to a brief conversation of dismissal. And sometimes they'll say, well, we're all God's children. We shouldn't bring race into it. And I will say, yes, but Satan brought the hatred to us. And we are all God's children, white people too. And that has been a softening way that I've gotten older Christians to continue the conversation and listening to me. I know that's not perfect and it's not great, but it's one of the only things I could think of that was a specific answer for what Jared asked me earlier.
Maybe because I'm not as familiar with this type of thinking, but could you take me through that again? Satan brought the hatred to us. What is that saying exactly?
It's not really saying anything. It's using Christian words and Christian tone that they're used to hearing, just so I can say something softer that will still plant the same seed. Okay. I grew up around these folks, around people who talk this Christian talk, this particular mix of Southern Baptist and I don't know what else type of talk. It's very unique to this area. And just saying certain phrases and words, it's sort of like giving them the secret handshake just so you can keep talking to them. Whenever you phrase things in a certain way and use the right words, especially at church where people are more willing to change their behavior a little bit if you say the right thing. That's a way that you can approach people and keep the ball rolling, so to speak, is say, well, you can liken whatever the negative thing is unto Satan. And then they'll have to nod their head and agree because that is the social contract there. So that's one of my Christian tactics that I use.
I'm learning. Yeah. You know, there's different subcultures and regions in all of our Western countries, but especially for anyone listening in Europe, let's say, you have to remember the continental size of the United States. And there really are several cultures here. The Prudentialist, who is a gentleman who was on with DC Perspective last month, and you introduced us to those two guys.
Those are some great young men. I like those guys.
They were great to speak to. He tweeted out that he was boar hunting, and I was like, people boar hunt? That's a thing? Yeah. I thought it was like something Vikings did in the year 800. I was like, see, America's a big place. I've never met someone that's gone boar hunting. I didn't know boar hunting was a thing.
My late uncle was a big time hunter, and he went boar hunting several times. He said it was a lot of fun. He used bow and spear. That's how he did it.
A lot of different kinds of people here, even within our Westman spheres, our Westman communities. The tactic I take with things like that of, and I'm just saying this now just to riff and get your thoughts, because it's always interesting to go back and forth with you on these things, is generally in the direction, of course, it's best to kind of get it in a pithy phrase. but generally in the direction of, well, yeah, I can see in a certain way the that more transcendent or universal perspective on things. But life is meaningful because of particulars. And just like you, it's natural that a man would defend his wife and children more vehemently and more readily in all kinds of emergency situations than just anybody. That's not saying that we don't take care of strangers and things like that. But I think anyone would recognize that there is this natural hierarchy of who you're close with and your
Mhm.
kin. And there's meaning there. Now, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that there's not a time and a place for reciprocity with other kinds of people. But it's just to recognize that there is this beautiful, rich tapestry of different types of people in the world. And that includes the different ethnicities and races of man. And that there's nothing, there comes a point where only those who are of that heritage are the ones who steward it. As I've said
Mhm.
recently, I think I even said this last week when Matt from AFA was on, it would be silly of any of the three of us to go to a meeting of people from China or Morocco or anywhere else, uh, if it was a kind of a community where they were talking about their interests and their history and their future, and try to say that we could then make decisions and influence, be part of that. We might be
Right.
invited to a function as guests. It might be interesting. We might have friends in that community, but to steward the continuum of their story, to act like their past is our past and their future is our future, well, then we start to get into breaking down the very things that make life beautiful and rich and meaningful. So oftentimes I bring it down to the level of family because
Mhm.
a lot of people can understand that. Now, unfortunately, I know that in our day and age, it's unfortunate for many reasons, but this is just one of them. A lot of people don't have as positive association with family anymore. Maybe they had a really tough upbringing and they really don't have a closeness with their parents or siblings. So maybe that's not even the best. But if you could tell someone maybe doesn't come from that kind of background, or at least maybe they did, but they're healing and they're aspiring to create their own family and break that cycle, if they came from abuse or something like that. However you need to phrase it, like Yizz has been saying, I think we can all understand that there are friends and family or people who are like family to us, let's say, that, yeah, of course, if it's safe, you might help a stranger in need or something like that. But there's not the same kind of visceral protection and love that you're going to have for your closest family and friends, etc. So that kind of that kind of bubbles up into cultures and people as well. That's an approach that I could take as well. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that before we go on.
Well, I mean, of course, that's talking about the circles of intimacy is always a good way to liken things when you're trying to talk about larger picture things. Like if you talk about, okay, well, you love your wife, you love your husband, you love your kids. Then you love your aunts and your sisters and uncles and in-laws and that kind of thing. And then you love the people that you're not related to in that way, that live around the corner or go to church with you. And that love resonates out, but it is stronger towards the epicenter. And that, that's a good metaphor to use. I've used it before occasionally, but it does work.
Yeah, and it's not even. It's often stronger. It's often stronger. But again, we do have to live. We live in the reality of a world where people are interfacing with others more than ever before. We don't
Hmm.
live 300 years ago where you rarely would see someone or meet someone from outside your village, let
Yeah.
alone the other side of the world. Now, a lot of people in our Western nations, you go to college and you meet exchange students from other countries, across oceans. Uh, so stronger, yes, but I also say sometimes it's not always degree. It's not always the strength. Sometimes you might want to take the tack of the expression. It's a different expression of love. Because let's say a mother, a woman in a family, she loves her husband, she loves her children. The love might, for the different children and the husband, I don't think she would say that she loves this child more than that child, or the husband more than the children, or vice versa. But there's different degrees and there's different types of love, because
Oh, sure. Yeah.
you might come across someone who says, you know, I have a friend who's of a different race, and we grew up together and we're very close, and I love this person in a way, in a certain manner,
Mhm.
where, let's say, like more than my own cousins, like certain people that are in my family that are blood. So what do you say to someone like that? It's true. I don't disparage if people have someone that they love in their life, no matter what. I'm not going to sit here and tell them, oh, no, no, you don't love that person as much, or you don't have the same regard because of X, Y, and Z. I can't tell you what your experience is. But all I can say is that's wonderful. That's beautiful. God bless. But that still doesn't change the fact that in the larger societal context, we can't be breaking everything down like this. And we're just trying to keep the right notes here. It's like, you don't smush down all the piano keys together to make a song. You play them. Everything in life has these boundaries among them, and then how they interrelate is what gives it beauty and gives it richness and gives it meaning. So you could take a very positive approach to it too. It doesn't always have to be. There are a lot of people in pain. There are a lot of people who have been victims of crime. We know that. That's that's probably easier. You know, like they'll tell you in England, just like London now, Birmingham is a majority non-white city, at least for the
Mhm.
demographic, but I think overall now. So they say everyone from Birmingham in the middle of England is red-pilled because of this experience. That's not what I'm talking about, though. You know, it's unfortunate that they've had to go through that. I'm talking about the finer points of these tougher cases where you meet someone who, uh, you know, maybe they didn't have all of these terrible experiences, and you're trying to connect these dots for them. So, like Yizz said, you have to have these things thought out. You know, we're always refining. You never come to the end of it, but you need to meet the person where they are. You know, if you speak to someone who grew up in a pretty well-off situation and they're well educated and they had friends at college from different countries, it's not going to land on them, like Yizz is saying. It's not going to land on them if you just hit them with crime stats and this and that, because
Right.
all their friends are the exceptions. All of
Yeah,
their friends are
exactly.
the
Right.
best of their lot, and it's not going to quite work that way. It's not going to quite work with the crime stats. You know, they're going to say, well, we all get along, so why can't the world be like that? Um, Anyway, real quick, and of course, you're our guest. I invite you to say anything to that if you want, or Jason
Sure.
has some things. But before we move on, I do want to make sure that I get this in here. So, Based Guitarist, who is a very, very good guitar player, and check out his videos. I enjoy them. Got to get the right band together for you, brother, so that your talents fully bloom. I can definitely understand and feel that as a musician myself. He is telling us in the chat that Nick has used White Wellbeing, uh, and that some in the chat, when he's speaking a certain way or they're speaking a certain way, I guess Bass Guitarist checks out the chat sometimes, or maybe he's very involved, he could tell us, says that they're having a White Wellbeing moment. So he is using the word White Wellbeing,
Good.
according to Bass Guitarist.
Well, that's great news. Yeah, and the clip that
Yeah.
HB had made, he came really close to saying it. He got right up to it, and then there was like a little hiccup or a hitch, and then he said our well-being. So yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that. If you have any clips of that, Bass Guitarist would love to see it.
And also, I know that a lot of you guys are on Twitter a bunch. And one thing I wanted to point out about Twitter, very few people use it numerically. But of the people that are active Twitter users, most of the big creators, politicians, speakers, corporate mouthpieces, people that have a lot of influence and sway are on Twitter. And I've seen anti-white trending twice in the last week. Have you guys noticed that? I have never seen that until the last week.
I don't know that I've yeah, I mean, it's just that it's one of the things that over the past few weeks it has. This is why I said on Sunday, I mean, this is the tipping point. We're there. The anti-whites are unable to hold it back. This was a whole world of not only the I mean, I wish we could just have like the most epic celebration because of that's what it deserves. That's what it deserves. You normally have to have trillions and trillions of dollars and control television, entertainment networks and the like to put something into the conversation of a society. And we've made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of regular working class folks who regularly feel themselves powerless and are powerless unless they want to take up the wand of the lexicon and dialectics that we use. We have changed the world. People will look back and say, that's really when that took off, and it became infinitely harder to victimize white people because the average white person in no time started just saying, whoa, that's anti-white. You're going to do that in my workplace because it's anti-whiteism. Why are we allowing these people to practice anti-whiteism in our workplace? Why are we allowing...
And make no mistake, that should be our goal. That is the goal right there, is to empower our people to be able to say, no more of this. You stop that. It's anti-white. I'm not going to feel white guilt. You're evil for doing it. You're being anti-white, and that's wrong. I'm putting my foot down. We need millions of us everywhere saying that, and that's the victory right there.
Beautifully said. That is exactly what we're doing. Let's see what the community is doing who are watching. And if you have any comments or questions that you want to financially gift with, you'll have to do it quickly because we're getting very close to tapping out. So let me jump on over to Cash App. I will swivel around and have a look. And it looks like already we have the great and heroic Slots, one of those great champions who is enabling us to have a freer, more beautiful, brighter future, future where our children are not white guilted and hate themselves and wish that they were other races. Slots financially gifting today $20 US. God bless you, good brother.
Thank you, Slots. You're a real hero.
He really is. Another one of the great champs. We have so many, and everybody's names are going into the Hall of Heroes who have been a hero. We will be in the storybooks that are yet to be written by our people. Look, turn around this way, and we have two over here. And let's get the raucous emojis out. Wild raucous emojis. Because, and Roy Danton's on it. He was reading my mind there. Get him out.
I love Roy's Eagles.
I know it. I know it. It's fantastic. Joseph, ladies and gentlemen, two financial gifts. One for the first one for $50 US, 50, and the second one for $25 US. Thank you both. Let me read what you have here, dear brother, and God bless you. Another champion in service to white well-being. He writes, so nice to catch a live stream. My schedule rarely allows it. Love the idea of localism, co-ops, and in general, building a community that is less fragile. I use the verbiage and dialectics, IRL, all the time. It connects, he writes. Absolutely. A beautiful testimonial there by Joseph. And again, working class folks, when they give $1 away, it is a testimonial. Money comes too hard to working class people for us to give it away for nothing. So that is a very meaningful thing. Thank you so much, Joseph. And then his $25 financial gift. Thank you, brother. The history we need to focus on is the history of our great Westmen, our scientists, artists, musicians, the men that harnessed electricity, created great architecture like St. Paul's Cathedral, the Duomo of Florence, Da Vinci, Michelangelo. The list of achievements is long and glorious. Amen. And something that is, I will tack onto that. I know Joseph is thinking this. There is a character limit, however, when you're writing. Absolutely thinking that by focusing in on our greatest champions, the reason why he is saying discuss them, remember them, celebrate them, is because each and every one of them are inside each and every one of you. And there's a reason why you can't access that potential. There's a reason why that latent ability lies there dormant in you, in its chrysalis, unable to break free and for you to access it. The reason is that you're infected with meme pathogens. Those are poisonous anti-white ideas that you have been taught over the totality of your life, beginning in your earliest days. all the way up through the present, and it will be with you all the way to your grave. You have to counteract those things. It's a lifelong practice to counteract them, to be healthier, to be more intelligent. It unleashes everything because the MPs are designed to prevent that access. And it has been and is and will continue to be the great goal of the work that we do here, to free our people of anti-whiteism by freeing them of the MPs, freeing them of their white noir, enabling them to access their true potential to power, PTP, so they can be all that their genetic architecture enables them to be.
Exactly.
Again,
that's what the mean pathogens and the anti-whites want.
Yes.
They want to weaken our biospirit, so not that we can't, but that we are afraid and won't. We still can. We just have to know it and feel it. We have to have the power. We have to have the will and the desire. That's why telling stories about the great people of our culture and history is more powerful to the people in your local community than if you could tell them 1,000 things that they're wrong about, that the teachers lied to them about history. None of that matters, because we're still in the same place, no matter who's right or wrong about history or what group said what to who. It matters to inspire and to build and to grow. That's why I think localism is the way. For those of you out there that want to be passionate and engaged, do the local thing. Build a co-op. Get involved in community church or homeschooling. Get involved in making something new. Maybe in your area, you got a lot of guys that like to work on cars together. Maybe you can build like an honorary little museum of all the different car parts and famous racers that might be from your area, so you can inspire kids and families where you live to reach for the stars or to burn rubber together. Like that's where we're going to win, is with positivity and inspiring people to break free of the damage and the mental and spiritual cancer that's been introduced to us by the mean pathogens. That's why the Go Free technique is so important.
Yeah, very well said. That's precisely right. We can get to those places, and so many are, folks. If you haven't realized that there is so much more inside of you to access, so much more talent, physically, mentally, and spiritually, it's there, and you cannot access it because you are like, I give the metaphor many times, you are like the eagle that has had your wings fettered from hatching. You don't know, as you trudge along through the dust of the earth with the other flightless birds, that you can be in the skies, but you feel that pull to the skies, especially when you hear the cry of the eagle in the stratosphere. You have to address the things that have held you back, and those joints will be stiff at first, but know that you too can soar far higher than you are today. And by doing so, you'll be able to help more of our brothers and sisters, and it all comes back to our entire community. We are people who have to learn that our individual well-being is only attainable by way of our group's well-being. Comes natural to everybody else, but we are seemingly predisposed to some hyper and destructive individualism. Though you don't have to worry about it being lost, individualism, where it has helped us. It's going nowhere. It's just part of our DNA.
I don't think there's a power in the verse that can make white folks not individualist.
I know it. I know it. So you don't have to worry about it going away. We have it in ample sum, and we just have to channel it and learn, use our minds the way we have used our minds to overcome many obstacles of nature, obstacles of the weather, obstacles of the land and sea, obstacles of disease, obstacles of other tribes and animal predators. We have to use our minds to overcome ourselves. And that is specifically the hyper-individualism that keeps us so narrowly focused. I mean, even I carry this all the way out to the old school nationalism that of white people that would put their particular country ahead of the well-being of the totality of our people. We've done that. The anti-whites defeated it. They killed so many of our people in the process of defeating that old school nationalism. We have to remember that we are a single people with many countries.
Indeed.
A great many hues on Western civilization that we celebrate. That's the true variety that I think that white people feel compelled to want to participate in, is to see that expression that we have in ourselves manifested elsewhere and in a little bit of a different way. It's a beautiful thing. Folks, if you have anything else to say, quickly say it, because we're going to begin tapping out here. It's been a magnificent tap episode, and it's always glorious to have this great champion Yizz on. She'll never know. I mean, you'll never live enough days, Yizz, to know how wonderful and how much of a champion you are. I know things.
That's sweet of you to say. You always talk me up so big.
Well, you deserve it. I wish I could say enough. I can't say enough, and it was the same is true for so many more. Of course, Mr. George and so many more do so much, and I don't have enough words to share and to spread the truth about the true champions that we have here in service to white well-being. So much coruscating so much more brightly than what the anti-whites, the regime, will put in front of you in your news and entertainment, and who have all of the fans fainting and fawning for an autograph. Those people are nothing. They're mostly just prostitutes of the regime. These are the true champions. And again, these are the folks that the history books, the fairy tales will write great stories about, lauding them. Can
I say something real quick?
Yes.
I have something fun to say. I love martial arts and hokey old kung fu movies, right? Like I've always thought they're fun, especially the ones from Hong Kong in the late 70s. They're just a hoot. Well, I love martial arts, and I know a lot about the history of it. And many times in history around the world, martial arts have come about because people are oppressed, and the people who oppress them don't let them have weapons and armor. So they have to think outside the box, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's the white people's turn. And that's what going free is. White folks, the world over, we have not had, one of the few things we have not invented organically is empty hand fighting because of an oppressed people that need to revolt. That's something that's unique to non-white people right now. So in the modern era, we're not fighting with bullets and swords. We're fighting with ideas and words and energy and passion. And the anti-whites who lord over us, who oppress us, they have taken those quote unquote weapons away from us and don't let us have them. And so going free, that's our martial art for the modern era. And it's finally our time, and it manifests the way that white folks do, which is with ingenuity, creativity, and brilliant ideas.
Amen to that. Amen. Let's keep you talking, get your final thoughts, and let folks know where they can find you one more time.
Certainly. Going forward, I have thought long and hard about what to do with my channel, especially with wanting to change up how I live, to have a better, more nurturing life with my husband and family, to be more involved at church and people in my local area. And I think that as much as I am pretty good at doing a mix of news dissecting, doom dissecting, making the videos, the pre-recorded scripted videos like I used to make, I don't think I'm going to do much of that anymore. I think I'm going to focus on my Dragons of Discord stream on Monday night because it's fun. I can invite a lot of people on. It's easy to weave in ideas. Weave in the lexicon of going free.
Tell people how that works for a minute. Tell people how that works for a minute.
Sure. Dragons of Discord, it's a confluence of many things that I like to do. Comedy improv, talking to a bunch of people in open forum, and role-playing fantasy stuff, sort of like Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. It's not really heavy on the role-playing on Mondays, but the structure of the show is I'm the ambassador of planet Earth to the Council of Worms, and that's WYRM. It means dragons. And through a magic crystal ball or whatever, there are dragons of a fantasy setting, you know, like dwarves and elves and that kind of thing, who have taken an interest in our confusing world because it's not like theirs. And every week I have a picture that has 5 different colors of dragons on it. And each one is a video, an article, or something going on in the news somewhere in Western civilization. And it's the party that I assemble. There's usually 5 or 6 of us. Someone picks everybody picks a number. I roll a die, and then they choose a dragon that we have to explain something to. And it's going to be about politics or culture or military stuff or economic trade things that are just ridiculous and don't make any sense that Babylon Bee might want to make an article out of. And it's up to us to explain to the dragon what the problem is. And ahead of time, I cleverly think up a personality and an origin for each of the 5 dragons and what exactly would confuse them and the words that they would say from their fantasy world about the topic. And at the end of the show, which takes about an hour, if we do well, which of course we always do because that's the structure of the show, we are given a reward from the Council of Worms, and the treasure that we get is a mix of white pilling articles, funny videos, funny memes, and old-timey cartoons that have been banned or are too racy or spicy to be in main circulation anymore. That's the reward. It's a rip-roaring good time. I've done about 10 of them. I've got the Aiden Paladin that I talked about. She is a regular on the show. She loves it. She's going to be coming back a couple of times in June. Don the Pleb, DC Perspective, Prudentialist. A lot of the content creators I work with really enjoy the show. Trigger Hippie, Scrump Monkey, a lot of just grab bag streamers that aren't necessarily in our spheres, so to speak, but they like the jokey format and they're getting involved too. So that's a good way to build connections with spheres I don't usually brush up against. So that's what I want to focus on as my primary stream of the week. And Friday, I have Eunuch Corner Club. Corner Club was originally my unscripted speak my mind or a little bit of script, but I go off script to talk about a topic. That turned into my weekly live stream where I bring on guests to talk about them or to talk about a specific topic. That's on Fridays. And what I've been doing the last few months is just inviting a single creator on to talk about what's important to them, what led them to being a content creator, and why what they do matters. And just last Friday, I had the wonderful Intellectual Embargo on, and we had a wonderful conversation about his work, about White Wellbeing, why what we do matters. And it was only about an hour long. I keep the corner clubs pretty short, like 60 to 90 minutes. And that's on Fridays. So that's going to be the primary goal of my content going forward, are just those two things. I'm not going to focus on making scripted pre-recorded videos much anymore. I love doing the morning walks. Those are going to continue because I like to get exercise. I like to be outside. I love being connected to nature. And those are easy for me to do. And my followers love them. So that's the three things that you're going to find on my channel going forward. I'm not really going to do news and doom dissecting anymore. I think that that's old hat and it's just a negative thing to focus on. And I would rather focus on positive, fun, engaging things that get people inspired and connected. So that's what I'm doing going forward. Follow me on Odysee, follow me on DLive, and follow me on Trovo. That's another backup that I have. And you can find me, well, someone like me, at not Yizz on Twitter. And you can find me at Yizz the Eunuch on Gab, Minds, Telegram, and there's another one that I use. No, I don't. That's the only 4 that I use now. So those are my social medias. You can find me those places. And if you want inspiring, fun, playful content that features not just White Wellbeing community creators, but other ones that might be allied to us one day in the future, my channel's definitely for you, and you should come give me a listen.
Yeah, definitely. Odysee, I know, is your big one right now. We're going to have all of your links under this show on the afterparty.tv when it's posted. Jason, you were saying?
No, it's you're up, brother. Where folks can find you, and
we're giving our goodbyes for the
goodbye.
Everyone has a good weekend. A lot of the states, it's unseasonably cold for the long holiday weekend. We have Memorial Day here for any of our international listeners. It is kind of the kickoff socially of summer, and it's a 3-day weekend, and Labor Day kind of caps the summer in September, but it's a way to remember veterans and people who have given their lives in our wars and things of that nature. So we're going to have a beautiful summer no matter what, though. My site is thegreatorder.com. That is the catalog of what I do. And exciting news. So my new song, Horizon, is going to be out this week. I just put, before we went on air today, I put a little teaser on some of my social media. I'll put the YouTube link in the chat when I'm done speaking, but it's embedded in a Twitter video as well. It's spread across an Instagram story, my Telegram, all places like that. It's just a little 40-second video that cuts between different parts of the song and has a mishmash of some different visuals to get your imagination flowing and wondering and curious. But you will hear the song itself very, very, very soon, and then there will be more after that. For anyone that doesn't know, I am mainly a recording artist, and I release songs, at least right now, one song at a time, not albums, but one song at a time. But I will be doing, to keep active, maybe like in front of the camera, play some songs or collaborations, things like that, because I definitely need to be active and putting out more things. So that is
I love your music. I hope you keep doing it.
I'll die if I don't. So I think I'm going to keep doing it. But anyway, Western Man, hopefully you know that that song's just a teaser. It's not really the song. It's just cut up parts of it. But thank you for the well wishes. Look out for the new song Horizon, and we'll be back with more tap, more activity, more interesting people to speak to. I'm sure we'll check in with Yizz at some point again as well, since she is so active online and in person, as she was explaining today. If you want to hear even more of what she's been up to and how she moves the needle in many ways, she was on tap a couple of months ago, so you could search her name, and that episode will come up. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
To you all. Stay safe, and we love you this weekend. And Jason will take us out.
Yes. Happy Memorial Day to everyone. We'll get the banner up on my channel. I've been very busy. And it's been glorious having Yizz on, always glorious with Mr. George. I want to thank Bartleby and Roy for modding today with all of the issues out there. And yes, Western Man, great to see you there. The song, Jared George's song, is coming up this week, folks. Make sure you absolutely do not miss it. Head over. I played it earlier. This little clip that he has made, where the music is kind of like blurred together at first, and it gets clearer and clearer, and then you can begin to hear just a piece of the song, and it's fantastic. I'm very excited about that, so make sure you catch that. I want to also let's get a round of applause of Ragas emojis for Machiavellia Sucks, who financially gifted $25 over here on Cash App. Thank you so very much for that, and writes, "Hail, brother," and Machiavellia Sucks. That's fantastic. Thank you so very much for that kind financial gift. And I'll just make sure that we are also blank over here, that I didn't miss anybody. Good, we didn't miss anybody. Big thank you to everybody who participated in the conversation today. And hello to everybody who is new, watching live or in replay. I know we have a lot of new folks showing up. YouTube's hiding your numbers. But listen, when you are new, make sure that you stay subscribed to this channel. Unlike the other channels, most of them you probably subscribe to, and you stay subscribed. And you will always go back. It will say subscribe. You will get the alerts. Not the case here. YouTube likes to unsubscribe you and to, I guess, unring the bell for you to get those alerts. So make sure you're on top of that. Make sure also to bookmark nowhiteguilt.org, nowhiteguilt.org, and theafterparty.tv, because if something happens here or on some of these other platforms, we can always be found there. Big thank you, final thank you to those who financially gifted today, and to every single one of you who are actually going free and engaged in the practice and helping and being a part of that change that is taking place in the world, something for which you can take great credit. Hey, final thought, would you like to drive home from work in your Volvo or whatever it is after that hard day of work, and you're thinking, geez, my boss hates me, or the coworker, colleague hates me. This is a misery. I've been stuck in the same place for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it might be. And then I got to go home to whatever that's difficult. Maybe the roof's rotting and you got to change some shingles or whatever it might be. Know this. If you are going free and you are helping not only to change yourself, therefore, but the world, you are effectively Clark Kent at work. When you go home, you are Superman. You're changing the world. We love you for that, and we look forward to seeing you here.